Let me tell you something about making content for YouTube. From the outside, it looks like the best job in the universe, and I won't pretend that it doesn't have its perks. You're your own boss, and so you work when you want to. But just like how there's no one telling you when to work, there's no one telling you when to stop either, which can often lead to consecutive 12-hour days, followed by burnout, where you spend the whole time feeling guilty about not working harder. But you get to work from home and on your own schedule. No dealing with rush hour traffic or jerks around the water cooler. The flip side of which being, you never have to leave your room, and you never have to interact with other people. And without a schedule to anchor you to the real world, you can find yourself waking up at 6 p.m. and can seriously go weeks without seeing the sun or talking to anyone. As you sit in your room at midnight, face lit only by the glow of the monitor, working away at the next piece of clickbait that'll hopefully pay your rent, slowly driving yourself insane. Anyways, today we're going to talk about K-On! K-On! Is a masterpiece. Flat out one of the best anime I've ever seen. I don't even feel the need to qualify that, frankly, because if you've watched it, you know that that's true. The short version is that the show has some of the best, some of the cutest, and some of the most relatable characters that I've ever seen in anything. The comedy is always on point, and Kyoto Animation consistently delivers on both the quality of the writing and of the equally impressive animation. Simply, I consider it to be one of the best anime ever made. And yet, despite thinking so highly of it, I've only ever watched it once. I don't want to watch it again, because, quite frankly, I'm kinda worried about what might happen if I did. Allow me to explain. So, K-On! Is the story of Yui Hirasawa, a girl entering high school who realizes that she has zero direction in life. She's never done anything interesting, only has one real friend, and is terrified of letting that continue to be the status quo. And so, through a series of comedic events, ends up joining the Light Music Club, consisting of 3 other members: Mio, the bassist, Mugi, the pianist, and Ritsu, the drummer. And the series revolves around the 4 of them, and the eventual 5th member, Azusa, hanging out and becoming friends, in the process of forming a band and living their lives. Now, despite the very nothing premise, the show has actually got some shockingly good storytelling abilities, such that the first season actually culminates in one of my favorite scenes ever. You see, episode 1 begins by showing Yui waking up and realizing that she is late for school. And so she rushes to get dressed, trips and falls on the floor, and sprints out of the house with toast in her mouth. And despite ostensibly being late, we see her continually stop and get distracted by things, like petting a cat and helping an old woman cross the street, before finally arriving at school and realizing she was never late in the first place, and is, in fact, accidentally early on account of having read her clock wrong. The final episode, then, mirrors this scene. After a whole bunch of character development, Yui and the gang are about to play on stage for their school's festival, but realize that through a series of mistakes, Yui's guitar is still at her house. And so, the other 4 go out onto stage and stall, playing the first song without her, as she rushes back to her house, grabs her guitar, and sprints back to the school to join her friends. And along the way, we see her make an identical journey to the one she made in the first episode, but now without getting distracted and stopping, catching herself before she falls, and telling us that now she has something to care about. And she finally arrives, climbs onto stage, and looking at all the friends she's made in the last year, she can't help but get emotional thinking about how much they mean to her and... Shut up! I'm not crying, it just looks like I am through your tears! For all of its fantastic animation and hilarious scenes, if there is one thing K-On! Does better than any other anime I have ever seen, it's getting you invested in its characters. Watching their interactions throughout the series, watching them grow together, hang out together, form memories together, it all feels so completely authentic. So when Yui starts crying, telling her friends how much they mean to her, that just stabs you right through the heart. Because by now, you empathize so heavily with what she's saying. You just get it. You know why she loves her friends so much, because you love her friends that much. You love your friends that much. But I get ahead of myself. Season 2 is evil. Having spent all of Season 1, and indeed most of Season 2, getting you invested into these characters and their friendship, the show starts building up to the gut punch of taking it all away. The final arc of the anime revolves around the girls gearing up to graduate high school, and facing the reality of their friendship potentially not lasting long beyond that, as they all go their separate ways in life, off to different colleges and different careers. The zenith of this being in episode 20, where they play again at their school festival, but this time as seniors, knowing this concert will be their last. And after the performance of their lives, they're all sitting together against the wall in this club room they've gotten to know so well over the last 3 years, as it slowly sinks in that that was it. That was the end. There'll never be another festival, never be another time when they're all together like this. And as that realization sinks in, each of them slowly begins to break down. There's a phenomenon attached to this anime, which I've chosen to call post-K-On! Depression. And in my research for this video, I have found a shockingly large number of other videos and discussion threads online confirming this. Quote, "I just finished K-On! And now I feel empty," or "K-On! Made me really depressed." I even found one video, post-anime depression, that is very obviously talking about K-On! But never specifies it as such, instead talking about an anime that made you depressed. But I want to hone in on K-On! Here, because I think there's something about it specifically that really messes with a portion of its audience. And I don't think it's the sad scenes I mentioned before, at least not by themselves. Like, yeah, K-On! Made me cry a lot, but so do a lot of shows, and none of them gave me the same kind of emptiness I felt after watching K-On! Not to mention, the show actually does have a happy ending, where it turns out that each of the girls is going to the same college. And yeah, it's sad they have to leave Azusa behind, but a year from now she'd likely join them again. Point being, I think there's something deeper at work here beyond just the show has a lot of sad scenes. And you want to know what I think that thing is? That despite the happy ending for the characters, the show's previous themes of separation and being forced to move on strike a nerve deep in the back of your mind on a meta level. Because even though ultimately the characters don't get separated from their friends, the viewer does. I did. Allow me to repeat what I said earlier. For all of its fantastic animation and hilarious scenes, if there is one thing K-On! Does better than any other anime I have ever seen, it's getting you invested in its characters. Watching their interactions throughout the series, watching them grow together, hang out together, form memories together, it all feels so completely authentic. And the show is so good at this that not only can it convince you the characters are all best friends, it can convince you they are your best friends. And for me, and I suspect many others. That struck a very particular chord. Now, I'm no scientist, I'm no psychologist, and I am certainly in no way qualified to answer the following question, but I am really curious the extent of a person you can understand just by knowing what kind of media emotionally resonates with them. Longtime fans of mine might notice this video starting to bear an uncanny resemblance to a few other things I've made. For example, How a Skeleton Made Me Cry, a video in which I explain how and why Papyrus, a goofy dumbshit skeleton named after a terrible font, was able to bring me to tears by saying the words, "No, you're my friend, I could never capture you." Another, Let's Talk About Chaos, in which I explain how my favorite character in my favorite manga broke me time and time again by longing for companionship, and yet who in turn is constantly pushed away and who pushes others away. A character who embodies every aspect of the hedgehog's dilemma, right down to literally having spikes growing out of her back that hurt the people she cares about. I wonder what being affected by that says about me. Well, knowing that I cry at those things probably makes a lot of sense when you realize that I spent my teens being the stereotypical antisocial weird kid. A situation which a potent combination of hormones, social awkwardness, and an elitist mindset ensured that I did nothing to in any way prevent or change. I didn't care about school, participated in almost no clubs or sports, was an asshole to everyone that I met, barely had any friends, and went through 4 years with my head down, acquiring a never-ending pile of C's. And then, immediately jumping from school into doing YouTube full-time, I spent the better part of 3 years friendless and almost completely isolated in my bedroom manufacturing content. And I regret it. So maybe knowing that allows you to connect some dots about me. Maybe when you know that I hate how I push people away, you can understand why the waterworks start in the penultimate chapter of SNO, when Astria yells to Chaos, "You don't need these wings that hurt people," while severing them. Maybe when you know that I barely have any friends, you can understand why a skeleton happy to abandon all of his previous goals because being friends with you is more important to him shears at my heartstrings. Maybe when you know that I look back at the most perfect social setting I could have ever possibly been put in and realize that I did everything in my power to ignore it and to ghost by as a loner, you can understand why seeing Yui, Mio, Ritsu, Mugi, and Azusa hanging out, enjoying spending time together, making amazing memories together, makes me want to curl up under a blanket and wish I could disappear. Which leads me to my conclusion. For me, K-On! Was a drug. K-On! Was a drug that I could inject so I could pretend to have friends. It is the most pure, concentrated form of escapist wish fulfillment that I have ever come across. You can turn it on, and suddenly, magically, your friends are here, and they're happy, and all they want to do is spend time together and time with you. But eventually, it ends. The credits roll on the last episode, the screen dips to black, and you're back in reality, sitting in a dark room, staring at a black TV, just as alone as you ever were. And it was as I sat there, after my first and only viewing of K-On!, faced additionally with all the pressures and hardships of working full-time making YouTube videos, waking up at 6 p.m., never seeing the sun, never leaving my room, never talking to anyone, that I sunk into a pretty deep depression. And not to get too hyperbolic, although it's practically unavoidable, but it almost felt like I was at a funeral. It was like all these characters, all my friends, had essentially died because I'd never be able to make any new memories with them. And not only had my fake friends just left me forever, but it put sharply into focus how alone I actually was, and I felt like I was powerless to do anything about it. That feeling just crushed me for a while afterward, and has since faded into a constant background radiation that is far less intense, but still hasn't gone away completely. That's why I've only watched K-On! Once. As I said, for me, K-On! Was a drug, and I feel like if I let myself relapse, the core problems that drew me to it in the first place won't change. However, one thing I think is vitally important to understand is that K-On! Does not cause depression. It is merely a giant magnifying glass that can be held up to other problems. But that's actually the best thing about post-K-On! Depression compared to actual depression. There is an obvious and actionable root cause. After I finished the show, I took a hard look at my life and decided things needed to change. First and foremost, more friends. That proved, and indeed still proves, to be difficult. Quitting YouTube definitely helped. Getting a job that forces you to wake up at 6 a.m. every morning, drive to a place that's not your room, and interact with a wide variety of people did wonders for my social confidence and mental health. And I do want to say, it's not impossible to do YouTube or other work-from-home jobs while maintaining your mental health, but since it doesn't just happen like with other jobs, you need to actively put effort into forcing it, which I was not doing at all. Additionally, I've also done a lot of self-improvement, like losing weight, gaining it back, and trying to lose it again, and made a lot of headway into fixing some of my bigger personality problems, like trying to be more social and less of a dick. It has been 4 years since I watched K-On!, and while I am orders of magnitude better than I was, I've still got a long way to go. And the important thing is that I'm still trying and determined to not stop trying. That's how I've dealt with post-K-On! Depression, or rather, how I am dealing with it. That's the only way, really, to tackle the underlying cause of it. To take it and use it as fuel to make myself do things that I wouldn't otherwise. To motivate me to put myself out there, get out of the house, off the internet, and try and form real connections with real people. And coming to that conclusion is why I wanted to make this very personal video in the first place. I've seen countless threads on Reddit and videos online talking about post-K-On! Depression, and in every single one of them, the most common responses were just, "It's okay, we all go through it. Here are a bunch of anime that are just like K-On! That you can watch in an attempt to fill that hole inside yourself." And those answers being the ones that most dominated the conversation really frustrated me, because more escapism isn't the answer. All the anime in the world isn't going to help fill that hole more than temporarily. And I think the people suggesting that as a solution are doing more harm than good, even if it was well-intentioned. What you really need to do is to take action and to fix the real problems that are causing your post-K-On! Depression if you ever want to get better, to improve. And it's hard and it's scary, believe me, I of all people know. And you might fail 1,000,000 times in the process. But what keeps me going is knowing that if I succeed, that I might get to feel even a fraction of the joy that I felt watching K-On! Again. But this time, for real. Thank you for watching.